The red-billed chough, Cornish chough or simply chough, is a bird in the crow family, one of only 2 species in the genus Pyrrhocorax.Its. 8 subspecies breed on mountains and coastal cliffs from the western coasts of Ireland and Britain east through southern Europe and North Africa to Central Asia, India and China. This bird has glossy black plumage, a long curved red bill, red legs, and a loud, ringing call. It has a buoyant acrobatic flight with widely spread primaries. The red-billed chough pairs for life and displays fidelity to its breeding site, which is usually a cave or crevice in a cliff face. It builds a wool-lined stick nest and lays 3 eggs. It feeds, often in flocks, on short grazed grassland, taking mainly invertebrate prey. Although it is subject to predation and parasitism, the main threat to this species is changes in agricultural practices, which have led to population decline, local extirpation, and range fragmentation in Europe. However, it is not threatened globally. The red-billed chough, which derived its common name from the jackdaw, was formerly associated with fire-raising, and has links with St. Thomas Becket and Cornwall. The red-billed chough has been depicted on postage stamps of a few countries, including the Isle of Man, with 4 different stamps, and the Gambia, where the bird does not occur. Taxonomy. The red-billed chough was first described by Linnaeus in his Systema Naturae in 1758 as upper Pyrrhocorax. It was moved to its current genus, Pyrrhocorax, by Marmaduke Tunstall in his 1771 Ornithologia Britannica. The genus name is derived from Greek pi upsilon rho rho omicron sigma, flame-colored, and kappa omicron rho alpha she, raven. The only other member of the genus is the alpine chough, Pyrrhocorax graculus. The closest relatives of the choughs are the typical crows, corvids, especially the jackdaws in the subgenus chough. Chough was originally an alternative onomatopoeic name for the jackdaw, Corvus monedula, based on its call. The similar red-billed species, formerly particularly common in Cornwall, became known initially as Cornish chough, and then just chough, the name transferring from one species to the other. The Australian white-winged chough, Corcorax melon or hamphos, despite its similar shape and habits, is only distantly related to the true choughs, and is an example of convergent evolution. Subspecies. There are 8 extant subspecies, although differences between them are slight. Pyrrhocorax, the nominate subspecies and smallest form, is endemic to the British Isles, where it is restricted to Ireland, the Isle of Man, and the far west of Wales and Scotland, although it recolonised Cornwall in 2001 after an absence of 50 years. Erythrophthalmus, described by Louis John Pierre Vieillot in 1817 as Caratia erythrohamphos, occurs in the red-billed chough's continental European range, excluding Greece. It is larger and slightly greenier than the nominate race. Barbarus, described by Charles Voury under its current name in 1954, is resident in North Africa and on La Palma in the Canary Islands. Compared to Erythrophthalmus, it is larger, has a longer tail and wings, and its plumage has a greenier gloss. It is the longest-billed form, both absolutely and relatively. Bailey, described by Austin Luma Rand and Charles Voury under its current name in 1955, is a dull-plumaged subspecies endemic to Ethiopia, where it occurs in 2 separate areas. The 2 populations could possibly represent different subspecies. Docilus, described by Johann Friedrich G. Mellon as Corvus docilus in 1774, breeds from Greece to Afghanistan. It is larger than the African subspecies, but it has a smaller bill and its plumage is very green-tinted, with little gloss. P. himalayanus, described by John Gould in 1862 as Fragilis himalayanus, is found from the Himalayas to western China, but integrates with P. docilus in the west of its range. It is the largest subspecies, long-tailed, and with blue or purple-blue glossed feathers. P. centralis, described by Erwin Stresemann in 1928 under its current name, breeds in Central Asia. It is smaller and less strongly blued than P. himalayanus, but its distinctness from the next subspecies has been questioned. P. brachypus, described by Robert Swinhoe in 1871 as Fragilis graculus var. Brachypus, breeds in central and northern China, Mongolia and southern Siberia. It is similar to P. centralis but with a weaker bill. There is one known prehistoric form of the red-billed chough, P. primigenius, a subspecies that lived in Europe during the last ice age, which was described in 1875 by Alphonse Milne Edwards from finds in southwest France. Detailed analysis of call similarity suggests that the Asiatic and Ethiopian races diverged from the Western subspecies early in evolutionary history, and that Italian red-billed choughs are more closely allied to the North African subspecies than to those of the rest of Europe. Description: the adult of the nominate subspecies of the red-billed chough, P. Pyrrhocorax, is 39–40 cm in length, has a 73 to 90 cm wingspan, and weighs an average 310 grams. Its plumage is velvet black, green glossed on the body, and it has a long curved red bill and red legs. The sexes are similar, but the juvenile has an orange bill and pink legs until its first autumn, and less glossy plumage. The red-billed chough is unlikely to be confused with any other species of bird. Although the jackdaw and alpine chough share its range, the jackdaw is smaller and has unglossed gray plumage, and the alpine chough has a short yellow bill. Even in flight, the two choughs can be distinguished by alpine's less rectangular wings and longer, less square-ended tail. The red-billed chough's loud, ringing chough call is clearer and louder than the similar vocalization of the jackdaw, and always very different from that of its yellow-billed congener, which has rippling preep and whistled swio calls. Small subspecies of the red-billed chough have higher frequency calls than larger races, as predicted by the inverse relationship between body size and frequency. Distribution and habitat. The red-billed chough breeds in Ireland, western Great Britain, the Isle of Man, southern Europe and the Mediterranean basin, the Alps, and in mountainous country across Central Asia, India and China, with two separate populations in the Ethiopian highlands. It is a non-migratory resident throughout its range. Its main habitat is high mountains. It is found between 2,000 and 2,500 meters in North Africa, and mainly between 2,400 and 3,000 meters in the Himalayas. In that mountain range it reaches 6,000 meters in the summer, and has been recorded at 7,950 meters altitude on Mount Everest. In Ireland, Great Britain and Brittany it also breeds on coastal sea cliffs, feeding on adjacent short-grazed grassland and macaque. It was formerly more widespread on coasts but has suffered from the loss of its specialized habitat. It tends to breed at a lower elevation than the alpine chough, that species having a diet better adapted to high altitudes. Behavior and ecology. Breeding. The red-billed chough breeds from 3 years of age, and normally raises only one brood a year, although the age at first breeding is greater in large populations. A pair exhibits strong mate and site fidelity once a bond is established. The bulky nest is composed of roots and stems of heather, furze or other plants, and is lined with wool of hare. In Central Asia, the hair may be taken from live Himalayan tar. The nest is constructed in a cave or similar fissure in a crag or cliff face, in soft sandstone. The birds themselves excavate holes nearly a meter deep. Old buildings may be used, and in Tibet working monasteries provide sites, as occasionally do modern buildings in Mongolian towns, including Ulaanbaatar. The red-billed chough will utilize other artificial sites, such as quarries and mine shafts for nesting where they are available. The chough lays 3 to 5 eggs 3.9 by 2.8 centimeters in size and weighing 15.7 grams, of which 6% is shell. They are spotted, not always densely, in various shades of brown and gray on a creamier slightly tinted ground. The egg size is independent of the clutch size and the nest site, but may vary between different females. The female incubates for 17-18 days before the altricial downy chicks are hatched, and is fed at the nest by the male. The female broods the newly hatched chicks for around 10 days, and then both parents share feeding and nest sanitation duties. The chicks fledge 31 to 41 days after hatching. Juveniles have a 43% chance of surviving the first year, and the annual survival rate of adults is about 80%. Choughs generally have a lifespan of about 7 years, although an age of 17 years has been recorded. The temperature and rainfall in the months preceding breeding correlates with the number of young fledging each year and the survival rate. Chicks fledging under good conditions are more likely to survive to breeding age, and have longer breeding lives than those fledging under poor conditions. Feeding the red-billed chough's food consists largely of insects, spiders and other invertebrates taken from the ground, with ants probably being the most significant item. The Central Asian subspecies P. centralis will perch on the backs of wilder domesticated mammals to feed on parasites. Although invertebrates make up most of the chough's diet, it will eat vegetable matter including fallen grain, and in the Himalayas has been reported as damaging barley crops by breaking off the ripening heads to extract the corn. In the Himalayas, they form large flocks in winter. The preferred feeding habitat is short grass produced by grazing, for example by sheep and rabbits, the numbers of which are linked to the chough's breeding success. Suitable feeding areas can also arise where plant growth is hindered by exposure to coastal salt spray or poor soils. It will use its long curved bill to pick ants, dung beetles and emerging flies off the surface, or to dig for grubs and other invertebrates. The typical excavation depth of 2 to 3 centimeters reflects the thin soils which it feeds on, and the depths at which many invertebrates occur, but it may dig to 10 to 20 centimeters in appropriate conditions. Where the two chough species occur together, there is only limited competition for food. An Italian study showed that the vegetable part of the winter diet for the red-billed chough was almost exclusively gauger bulbs, whilst the alpine chough took berries and hips. In June, red-billed choughs fed on Lepidoptera larvae, whereas alpine choughs ate cranefly pupae. Later in the summer, the alpine chough mainly consumed grasshoppers, whilst the red-billed chough added cranefly pupae, fly larvae and beetles to its diet. Both choughs will hide food in cracks and fissures, concealing the cache with a few pebbles. Natural threats: the red-billed chough's predators include the peregrine falcon, golden eagle and Eurasian eagle owl, while the common raven will take nestlings. In northern Spain, red-billed choughs preferentially nest near lesser kestrel colonies. This small insectivorous falcon is better at detecting a predator and more vigorous in defense than its corvid neighbors. The breeding success of the red-billed chough in the vicinity of the kestrels was found to be much higher than that of birds elsewhere, with a lower percentage of nest failures. This species is occasionally parasitized by the great spotted cuckoos, a brood parasite for which the Eurasian magpie is the primary host. Red-billed choughs can acquire blood parasites such as Plasmodium, but a study in Spain showed that the prevalence was less than 1%, and unlikely to affect the life history and conservation of the species. These low levels of parasitism contrast with a much higher prevalence in some other passerine groups. For example, a study of thrushes in Russia showed that all the field fares, redwings and song thrushes sampled carried hematozoans, particularly Hemoproteus and Trypanosoma. Red-billed choughs can also carry mites, but a study of the feather mite Gabuchinia delibata, acquired by young birds a few months after fledging when they join communal roosts, suggested that this parasite actually improved the body condition of its host. It is possible that the feather mites enhance feather cleaning and deter pathogens, and may complement other feather care measures such as sunbathing and anting, rubbing the plumage with ants. Status: the red-billed chough has an extensive range, estimated at 10 million square kilometers, and a large population, including an estimated 86,000 to 210,000 individuals in Europe. Over its range as a whole, the species is not believed to approach the thresholds for the global population decline criterion of the IUCN Red List, and is therefore evaluated as least concern. However, the European range has declined and fragmented due to the loss of traditional pastoral farming, persecution and perhaps disturbance at breeding and nesting sites, although the numbers in France, Great Britain and Ireland may now have stabilized. The European breeding population is between 12,265 - 17,370 pairs, but only in Spain is the species still widespread, since in the rest of the continent breeding areas are fragmented and isolated. The red-billed chough has been categorized as vulnerable in Europe. In Spain, the red-billed chough has recently expanded its range by utilizing old buildings, with 1,175 breeding pairs in a 9,716 square kilometers (mi) study area. These new breeding areas usually surround the original montainecore areas. However, the populations with nest sites on buildings are threatened by human disturbance, persecution and the loss of old buildings. Fossils of both chough species were found in the mountains of the Canary Islands. The local extinction of the alpine chough and the reduced range of red-billed chough in the islands may have been due to climate change or human activity. A small group of wild red-billed chough arrived naturally in Cornwall in 2001, and nested in the following year. This was the first English breeding record since 1947, and a slowly expanding population has bred every subsequent year. In Jersey, the Durrell Wildlife Conservation Trust, in partnership with the states of Jersey and the National Trust for Jersey, began a project in 2010, aimed at restoring selected areas of Jersey's coastline with the intention of returning those birds that had become locally extinct. The red-billed chough was chosen as a flagship species for this project. Having been absent from Jersey since around 1900, Durrell initially received 2 pairs of choughs from Paradise Park in Cornwall and began a captive breeding program. In 2012, the red-billed choughs were living free in the Central Valley area of Durrell Wildlife Park, and the Trust expects colonization of the coastal areas of Jersey in the following years. In culture, in Greek mythology, the red-billed chough, also known as sea crow, was considered sacred to the Titan Cronus and dwelt on Calypso's blessed island, where the birds of broadest wing the mansions form, the chough, the seamew, the loquacious crow, The red-billed chough has a long association with Cornwall, and appears on the Cornish coat of arms. According to Cornish legend, King Arthur did not die after his last battle, but rather his soul migrated into the body of a red-billed chough, the red color of its bill and legs being derived from the blood of the last battle, and hence killing this bird was unlucky. Legend also holds that after the last Cornish chough departs from Cornwall, then the return of the chough, as happened in 2001, will mark the return of King Arthur. Up to the 18th century, the red-billed chough was associated with fire-raising, and was described by William Camden as Incendiaria avis. Oftentimes it secretly conveyeth fire sticks, setting the houses afire. Daniel Defoe was also familiar with this story. It is counted little better than a kite, for it is of ravenous quality, and is very mischievous. It will steal and carry away anything it finds about the house that is not too heavy, though not fit for its food, as knives, forks, spoons and linen cloths, or whatever it can fly away with. Sometimes they say it has stolen bits of firebrands, or lighted candles, and lodged them in the stacks of corn, and the thatch of barns and houses, and set them on fire, but this I only had by oral tradition. Not all mentions of chough refer to this species, because of the origins of its name. When Shakespeare writes of the crows and choughs that wing the midway air, or Henry VIII's Vermont Act of 1532 is ordered to destroy choughs, crows and rooks, they are clearly referring to the jackdaw. Since at least the 14th century, Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, has been attributed a coat of arms consisting of 3 Cornish choughs on a silver field. The symbolism behind this is not known for certain. According to one legend, a chough strayed into the cathedral during Becket's murder, while another school of thought states that the choughs are a canting reference to Becket's name, as they were once known as Beckets. The latter theory does not stand up to scrutiny, as the use of the term Becket to mean a chough is not found before the 19th century. Regardless of its origin, the chough is still used in heraldry as a symbol of Becket, and appears in the arms of several persons and institutions associated with him, most prominently the city of Canterbury. This species has been depicted on the stamps of Bhutan, the Gambia, the Isle of Man, Turkmenistan and Yugoslavia.